To make the story short, amen, they end up in Egypt. You know what happened. God called them out in the loins of Abraham. Amen. Said, amen, let them thank God, amen, to the place of their promise. Amen. But then for a season, he allowed them to be estranged from their promise. Can I get a witness in the house? They were there on the edge of Canaan. They were there in the midst of Canaan. But then, amen, they had to spend a season away from Canaan. You know, I found out sometimes God will expose you to your promise before he gives you the promise. Sometimes God, I wish there was somebody that knew what I was talking about. Have you ever had a sense of what you're supposed to be having? Have you ever had a sense of where God was taking you? Have you ever, thank God, just caught a little whiff, a little smell of what God was getting ready to do in your life, and then it looked like it got pushed away from you? But I came to tell you that when that happens, it does not mean that God has taken it away forever. He said, I've taken you away for a season so that I can strengthen you, to make you ready to handle what I'm about to give you. In other words, my character. Y'all ain't gonna help me. Shake your neighbor's hand and say, neighbor, God told the preacher to tell me to tell you, I have not denied you the promise that I have for you. He said, but I got you in a place so I can develop your character and make you ready to handle your promise. Clap your hand and shout glory. Shout glory. Let me slow down for just a second. On your way to your seat. Take your seat. On your way to your seat. Tell your neighbor, God is getting you ready. Tell somebody else the same thing. God is getting you ready. In the difficulty, he's getting you ready. In the ostracism, he's getting you ready. Beneath all of that pressure, God says, I'm getting you ready. I'm developing and refining you. I'm putting you together. I'm fitting the pieces of the puzzle of your life in place, one piece at a time. I'm making it slow so that when you get to where you've got to, not only will you appreciate the blessing itself, you'll appreciate the process. And if you appreciate the process, you'll give glory to the God that worked out the process. And every time you come to church, you throw your hands up to heaven and say, thanks be to God. Somebody shout glory. They went. Can I have just a few minutes? They went from the brink of the promise down into Egypt. That's where Exodus picks up. They're in Egypt. 400 years they're in Egypt. 400 years. Amen. They were there. They went there initially in a good place. They went there initially with a favorable Pharaoh. They went there initially with Joseph, the brother that they had betrayed, serving as prime minister, looking out for them. But how many know that the tables can turn overnight? Everything was transitioned, and when they looked up generationally, there was a shifting in the Pharaoh that sat upon the throne. And once was a Pharaoh that knew Joseph, but the Bible explains it on this wise and says there arose a Pharaoh which knew not Joseph. This is the Pharaoh that we read about in the early chapters of Exodus. This is the Pharaoh that became threatened, amen, by what God was doing with Egypt, or with Israel in Egypt. This is the Pharaoh that looked at them. They were restricted to Goshen, but in Goshen they began to grow. Turn and tell your neighbor, tell them God blesses me wherever I am. Or that may not be somebody's testimony. I want somebody else to say it. If it ain't your testimony, keep your mouth shut. But if it is, tell your neighbor, he blesses me wherever I am. Tell him he blesses me in strange places, places that I don't look to be blessed. My blessing shows up anyhow. Places I expect to be cursed, but God takes the curse and changes it into a blessing. God, somebody just shout, God will bless you. Put it in your neighbors here. I got to prophesy a little tonight. Put it in your neighbors here. Just let them hear it. You ain't even got to turn to them, but just holler it out your mouth and tell them God will bless you. You don't have to leave your job. He'll bless you in that workplace of opposition. You don't have to leave your neighborhood. He'll bless you with angry neighbors. You don't have to get off your ministry. He'll bless you in the midst of the haters. Yea, though I walk through the valley